Just to give everybody here a little bit more context about the Law Foundation and what we do, we see it as our role, our mission, to put people at the heart of justice. And when we're looking for a Guthrie Award recipient, we're looking for someone who has imbued that in their legal practice and their career. Through granting and collaboration, we invest in knowledge and services that help people understand the law and use it to improve their lives. So this is the 14th time that we've presented the Guthrie Award. This event is always special for the staff and trustees at the Foundation. Tonight we recognize an Access to Justice champion who reflects the very best of our profession and embodies, as I said, the values which the Foundation seeks to encourage and live by every day. Mary is, as you've heard, a trailblazer, really a pioneer, remarkable for championing the rights of children and the voices of children before that was the accepted wisdom. As you've heard, the nomination letters highlight her incredible commitment to her clients, young people with legal problems who have few supports and face significant barriers to accessing the justice system on their own. Those letters, as you've heard, all attest to the story of a leader whose work is marked by empathy, kindness, and caring. But remember this, that doesn't in any way diminish the power of her advocacy. I have to concede that 2 days before we decided that Mary Birdsell was the recipient, she whipped my butt in the Court of Appeal. Mary is the lawyer who not only successfully argued a case and got a ruling that a 10-year-old child living in immigration detention had the right to attend school, she also coordinated a roster of drivers, including herself, to take the child to school when it became clear that's what was needed. Mary recognized that homeless youth who had turned 18 were no longer eligible for the clinics. That's the clinic that she was working at, Justice for Children and youth-focused services, even though their legal needs hadn't diminished. So she spoke to young people, conducted focus groups, listened to what young people said about their legal needs and the realities of their lives. That was groundbreaking work when it was done. She learned that homeless youth needed a direct line to a lawyer. They didn't have access to a phone, and they couldn't leave a callback number. So they needed to be able to reach a lawyer who could talk to them when they called. And therefore, the launching of what you've heard was the Street Youth Legal Services Program, which offered a much-needed direct line to a lawyer, skipping the formal intake process. So innovative and so important. The program also sends a lawyer out into the community to meet the youth where they are, at shelters, drop-in centers, and health clinics all over the city of Toronto. So yes, Mary puts people at the heart of justice. One Crown attorney wrote in a letter supporting Mary's nomination, "Even in cases where I may have originally considered a custody and supervision order, Mary can change my view of a case with her extensive knowledge of the young person's life story and his or her needs." She shares her knowledge and expertise widely, contributing to youth-serving organizations like Peace Builders and the Ontario Justice Education Network. She trains and mentors lawyers, builds relationships, and creates capacity in the form of new committees and organizations like the Child and Youth Law section of the OBA. Mary's contribution to the justice sector includes extensive publications, presentations on panels, frequent appointment as amicus curiae, test case litigation, and participation on many expert committees. She's a mentor and resource for everyone. Nous sommes ravis d'ajouter le nom de Mary Birdsell à la liste des récipients du prix Guthrie et de lui remettre cette médaille. Mary, please come here. On behalf of the Law Foundation of Ontario, it is my sincere pleasure to present this award to you tonight. You, Mary Birdsell, a foundation grantee, an advocate, a mentor, a leader whose intellect and skill are always paired with compassion, empathy, and respect for the young people you serve. Congratulations.
Well, hello and thank you. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, and I'm going to take Cheryl to task about it later in particular, but also to you, Linda. Thank you very much to both of you. And thank you very much to everyone who's here for being here. It is overwhelming to see so many people from all sorts of different parts of my life, and I really appreciate very deeply the opportunity to be here with you, and I'm very nervous about speaking to you, frankly. I wanted to thank Linda Rothstein for her kind words and for bringing me here. Thank you to the trustees and the staff of the Law Foundation, to Tanya and Tracy and Kirsty, and thank you to the Law Society, the treasurers and past treasurers, and benchers of the Law Society. It's a deep honor, and it's very humbling to have been nominated, to say nothing of having been made a recipient of the Guthrie Award. I feel very, very privileged to be recognized in this way, and I will do my best to continue to live up to the legacy of Donald Guthrie and previous recipients, and to the honor of the Law Foundation. I also wish to express my thanks to the Law Foundation for all of the work that it does, for all the support that it gives to people working in access to justice, including justice for children and youth in substantial ways over the years, as has been mentioned, and for creating this award that makes room for recipients who sit at the head of the justice system table, as well as those of us who are more on the front lines. I wish to thank my colleague, mentor, and dear friend Cheryl Milne for nominating me, to Emily Chan, Julia Hayes, Emma Rhodes, Justice Lucy McSweeney, Eva Marszewski, Brock Jones, Peter Rosenthal, and Jessica Reiki for supporting that nomination. As I mentioned, just reading their letters of support to that nomination was a humbling experience. As I mentioned at the outset, I did feel somewhat intimidated when considering what I might say this evening, partly because of the context and the people here who are deep thinkers on the issue themselves, and those who might actually not care, like possibly my children. As many of you know, I don't normally feel at a loss for words, and in particular, you give me a Justice for Children and Youth issue and I can really get going. I said if he were here, I'm sure that the judge I appeared in front of last week would agree. But I felt daunted by the context. But as I began to try and figure out what I might say and how I might frame my thoughts about access to justice, I started to feel very grateful for the opportunity. It's a privilege, in fact, in my work life to spend some time thinking about what I would like to say and how I feel about access to justice at this stage in my career. Although as a profession and as a society, we continue to make great strides in the interest of access to justice, there is, of course, much work to be done. It's a gift to be able to spend some time thinking about what I've learned and try to articulate those broader themes as they might inform my own future work and I hope others' work in the field. I would like to identify a couple things that I think are elemental and that may help us as we move forward in seeking ever deeper access to justice. I would like to talk about gratitude, grace, and defiance. I want to encourage the inclusion of these three things in the tapestry of our thinking and action on access to justice, not just as an ideas, but as an approach or a lens, an attitude or a stance that we might take as we strive to make greater access to justice available to more people. I think it is, or it can be, a perplexing question for those of us who make access to justice our endeavor. Why do we care? And how can we recruit others to the cause, or at least a belief in the cause? And I'm going to try and pull some of these threads together, thoughts that are informed by what I have seen and what I have learned in my work. Thoughts that I hope will help to use us at Justice for Children and Youth and perhaps across the field as we pursue access to justice. By way of framing the quandary, I want to describe a recent and recurring vexation. A couple of weeks ago, I was at the Supreme Court of Canada with my colleague Jane, and we were there as interveners, and sometimes the court offers you 5 minutes to make oral submissions, which, if you're a lawyer, is almost nothing. And on this day, they didn't even allow us to give our 5 minutes. So we had the privilege, actually, of being able to sit back and think a little bit about what was going on and be real observers and take things in. But what stuck with me, or what the question I became stuck on, was quite vexing. Why does it seem so difficult for a room full of very bright, well-educated, thoughtful, and impassioned people with power, to explain the reality of disenfranchised people to another group of similarly bright, thoughtful, impassioned, and powerful people. And actually, quite a bit more powerful in the context, but you get the picture. Now, there are any number of ways that you might challenge my premise here, but I hope you'll indulge me a little bit, because in fact, this has been a persistent and burning question of my career. How do we engage people who have power to help them understand what it really means to be excluded and marginalized? How do we come to understand what that really means when we sit in an entirely different world? What it means to be excluded and marginalized, to be left out and have little or in fact no access to justice. And I think that part of the answer is that meaningful appreciation for the challenges of access to justice require an appreciation for or an attitude, a stance of gratitude, of grace, and of defiance. Gratitude for our access and our privilege, grace to take the opportunity and ability to engage with and learn from the lived experiences of others, especially those who do not have our access and privilege, and defiance as in a refusal to accept the continued disenfranchisement of some people while we and others prosper and have access to power and to justice. So, gratitude. It seems to me that an attitude or a stance of gratitude may be essential to understand and to inform our thinking and action around access to justice. I am personally grateful for a great many things, and I want to spend, if you will let me, a moment acknowledging some of these. As mentioned, I am grateful for this award and for this evening. I am grateful to my family, to my parents, Jane and Dale, and my brother, David, to my spouse, Trevor, and my children, Morley and Joseph, whose gifts to me are vast and enduring. I am grateful for friends who are here, many of whom who are here, who, in addition to so many other gifts, have helped to raise me as a lawyer and as a social justice advocate. I am grateful for my direct colleagues at Justice for Children and Youth, Emily, Karen, Samira, Andrea, Jane, Julia, Jessie, Claire, Corrine, and Athena, who make our work at Justice for Children and Youth great, whose passion, intellect, skill, dedication, generosity, and of course good humor make our work possible. I am grateful to the many other colleagues at organizations like Peace Builders, OGEN, the Office of the Children's Lawyer, the Provincial Advocate's Office, other legal clinics in the clinic system, academics, children's service providers, Crown attorneys, judges, and more. And I am very grateful for the opportunity to work with our clients, whose lives they share at very vulnerable times, people who have taught me a great deal about gratitude, grace, and defiance. I am grateful for the opportunity to work in Ontario's robust legal clinic system, a model of legal services provision that is the envy of the world, and in fact is a substantial inspiration to me at every stage in terms of advancing novel approaches and maintaining a commitment to those novel approaches. I'm grateful for the conscientious support of the Law Society and the Law Foundation for Ontario's specialty community clinics, including Justice for Children and Youth, as well as the Legal Aid's commitment to the same. Their bold awareness of how crucial legal aid clinics and legal aid are to the maintenance and development of a fair and just democracy is an incredible access to justice story in and of itself. I am grateful for the opportunity to work with and in pursuit of recognition of the rights and dignity of children, and for the incredible colleagues, teachers, mentors, and friends, people who are often all of those things simultaneously, who have supported me personally and professionally throughout my career. So as you can see, I am incredibly privileged. I suspect that many of us in this room, if not all of us, can relate to those kinds of personal gratitudes in some way or another. Those of us, and again, perhaps all of us in this room who have access to justice, generally have it as a matter of good fortune and the accident of our birth or disposition. Also, of course, hard work, determination, discipline, perseverance, resilience, all these important things, all of which we can be grateful for. I am grateful for the privilege I have, for the socioeconomic power, for the power of my education, my cultural and racial privilege, my age privilege, and many, many more contexts. I have learned that connecting to this kind of gratitude is fundamental to the meaningful approach to access to justice. It is fundamental in order for us to think creatively enough, to think deeply enough, and to challenge our assumptions and our predispositions thoroughly enough that we can meaningfully address access to justice questions. To be able to address access to justice in ways that in fact will make justice accessible to those from whom it has been withheld. I think we have to recognize how grateful we are, how grateful we should be for our privilege and our power, and our ability to access justice before we can truly meaningfully try to make it accessible to others. I'm grateful for the work I'm privileged to do at Justice for Children and Youth. I am called upon almost every day to be aware of my privilege, to honor it and be grateful, and to try to address the problem of making the access which I can take for granted available to others. Clinic work provides an incredible vantage point from which to witness the lack of access to justice experienced by many, and the challenge of addressing access to justice on so many levels, on the front line, in systemic ways, in courts, in healthcare facilities, and so many other contexts too numerous to name. On the front line, we address not only the fundamental questions like, can I have a lawyer for my case, but can I get information about how the law works? Can you even find out what your legal entitlements and obligations might be? But also, can you get care for your trauma? Can you get care for your mind and your body? Is there a law that will support your being and your lived reality? Young clients who experience homelessness and live on the street, they don't trust people in positions of power. They've had incredible lists of bad experiences. They can't prioritize things like their legal issues or even showing up for court someday because their problems are so much more elemental and fundamental. Or the transgender young person who just wants ID that bears the name consistent with their lived reality. All of these kinds of things are, for me, incredible moments to generate gratitude in myself and try to change the world as I see it. We also, in clinics, seek more structural and systemic levels of access to justice. We hope to find ways of pushing the law that will specifically seek to offer justice to those who have been excluded and marginalized. So maybe you have some information, and maybe even you have a lawyer, and there is justice that kind of looks accessible, but how can the law work for you as it intended to, or as it works for others who come with more power to the front line? How are you policed if you are a racialized young person? Or if you are a child, will a judge allow your opinions to inform her decision when making child protection court order? Or the decision maker at the immigration issues hearing consider your unique position and the rights to which you are entitled as a child migrant? Many things have to be in place in order to access this kind of justice. And finally, we see the approach of society broadly, where we must confront the question about whether we offer access to justice, but additionally, does society care? Do we collectively offer access to justice that will have a meaningful manifestation in the person's lived experience? So, turning to grace. An attitude of grace is necessary to meaningfully engage in promoting access to justice for those who've not had it, because we need to learn what their other people's world experiences are about. The grace is about the privilege of access to other people's lives and experiences, to have people let us into their worlds, to trust us, to earn that trust, to welcome us to share in and be educated by the knowledge that they have to give, based not on their academic credentials or their professional experience, but because of their lived experience. Our child clients are not legal experts and often live in a world where they are rarely even allowed to act. They are often predominantly acted upon. But they are the experts in their own lives. And when we are able to listen to what they are telling us, the wisdom that they are sharing, we will be able to join our power and creativity with theirs to develop more effective systems, help create better outcomes, resolve disputes more effectively, and make more fair and comprehensible decisions to better access and better justice. For example, hearing what the child is telling us when our educational supports are not resolving behavior issues. What they are telling us is that they are not getting what they need. So whether we are trying to solve the problem of what self-represented litigants need, or what self-harming incarcerated teenagers need, or what Indigenous young people in remote places need, ensuring that we invite those who are expert in those experiences, not only invite them to the table, but invite them to help us design the solutions. We will then help develop better access to justice. And finally, a turn to defiance. It's almost trite, but to meaningfully engage in access to justice, we must refuse to accept that some people in our communities have no access to safe water or food or education or to the protection of law. They have no access to justice, while others of us take these things for granted. This refusal to accept unequal access to justice, this defiance, is a natural part of the tapestry and comes from a place or a stance of an attitude of gratitude and an acceptance of grace. Ryan asked me to make sure that I quoted Woody Guthrie somewhere along the way. So I'm going to add that, that one of the things he said is that a folk singer's job, and I'm going to suggest a lawyer's job, is to comfort disgruntled people, to comfort, now I'm forgetting the word, apologize, to comfort discomforted people and to discomfort comfortable people. That's the point. It took me a while to get there, but yeah. So I'll wrap it up by saying that it is my great privilege to work among and learn from all of you who contribute so much to our justice system and contribute so much either directly or indirectly to my ongoing development. And it is equally my privilege to work with children and youth in Ontario who contribute so much to my ongoing development and to the development of access to justice. Thank you for this time and for this honor.